Welcome to The Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Just after 11 a.m. on December 27th, the New York City 911 system received a warning that a bomb was to detonate at noon in the landmark of NYC, the Empire State Building. The New York City Police Department responded urgently with bomb squads on the scene. At 12:32 p.m., NYPD chief announced via his official Twitter account that after an investigation by patrol officers, NYPD Critical Response, and Bomb Squad, at this time, there are no credible threats to the Empire State Building. The police later said that the Empire State Building is safe. So the person who called 911 about the bomb was either a prankster or had ulterior motive. The reason why this would make so many people nervous is because of the big explosion that had just taken place in Nashville, Tennessee. Police services across the nation are on high alert now for similar incidents, especially since the cause and motive of the explosion in Nashville has not yet been determined. Early Christmas morning on the 25th, Nashville police received a report of gunshots near 166 2nd Avenue at 5:30 a.m. When the officers arrived at the scene, they found a white camper van passing in front of the AT&T building. It repeated a radio broadcast saying that there would be an explosion in 15 minutes and to evacuate now. While the police began to evacuate residents, the content of the broadcast kept on changing. In the last 3 minutes before the explosion, it played a very happy old song from 1964 called Downtown. About 6:30 a.m., the explosion occurred. The location of the explosion was right in front of AT&T building. Now, as you know, this explosion was very violent and caused widespread damage. The entire street was in a mess. The surrounding buildings were completely destroyed. More than 20 buildings and 41 businesses were destroyed. Even from a distance, you could hear the sound of the explosion. You could also see smoke from the explosion site. Local officials said that for the next several months, city officials will be checking the stability of the buildings. As of now, 3 people were injured in the explosion, fortunately with non-threatening injuries. This was thanks to 6 local police officers. When they arrived on the scene and heard the vehicle playing the warning recording, they helped evacuate at least a few dozen of people from the block, which prevented more injuries. After a thorough investigation of the crime scene, police later found human remains which they concluded belonged to the bomber. The day after the explosion, the FBI told the media that they had a total of 500 clues about the explosion. One bomb expert said the investigation was like putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle. The explosion shattered evidence that could provide clues and threw it into different areas all around the site. 2 investigators now believe the incident was a suicide bombing, not a terrorist attack. On December 26, local police confirmed to the media that a 63-year-old male named Anthony Q. Warner is a person of interest in the case. Now, with court authorization, the FBI raided Anthony Warner's home that is near the site of the explosion. Looking at the Google Street View, the white RV that exploded is suspected to have been parked outside of Warner's home since at least April 2013. According to Daily Mail, Warner transferred his $160,000 house to another person for free on November 25th. The new owner claims she was unaware of the exchange. Fox 17 cited the sources that reported Warner had been killed in the explosion, which means the human remains found by the police at the scene belonged to Warner. The owner of Frederick & Clark, a local real estate company in Nashville, took the initiative to report to the police, informing them that Warner might be the person who worked for their company for several years as a computer technician. But this was only one of the multiple IT jobs. About a month ago, Warner wrote an email to the company saying he could no longer work for the company without giving a reason. The company's owner said that Warner was very gracious, and it was surprising that he was involved in such a matter. He apparently lived in Nashville for decades. So what was his motive for the bombing then? As admitted by local officials, it was not directed at people. Then what is the target? A lot of people have speculated that it was directed at AT&T equipment. It's true that AT&T's communication facilities were the most affected by the bombing. Warner's neighbors have described him as a bit of an oddball, and the FBI is probing whether he had a paranoia about 5G technology. Now, that sounds like a reasonable explanation since AT&T is the communications company that owns the 5G technology. But why did Warner choose the AT&T building in Nashville when there is no information that shows that it is an important part for the 5G technology? Is the motive behind it really just the 5G? Is Warner a scapegoat, or is he really involved in the case? Or is he just an unimportant figure while the important players are hiding behind the scene? So a variety of related statements on the internet spread. Some people said that after a closer look at the explosion video, they found that it was not the RV that exploded. Others say that a missile seemed to be captured in another monitor. But these speculations seem like a stretch. But there's another theory by online netizens who previously posted on Facebook 4 days before the bombing, claiming that AT&T was awarded a contract to conduct a forensic audit of the Dominion voting machines, so many of them were to be delivered to the AT&T facility in Nashville this week. The site of the explosion on the 25th is a very important AT&T facility in the area, which is responsible for the transfer and transmission of regional information. So could it be that the voting machine was transported here? Netizens also reposted a screenshot of their post after the explosion with the text, "Coincidence?" Now, although this rumor sounds interesting, it is all speculation without any evidence. First of all, other than Antrim County in Michigan, no other Dominion voting machines have been publicly reported as being available for judicial audit, let alone sent to AT&T for audit. If President Trump's team had confirmed the news, they would have spoken up, since they would not have kept quiet on such breaking news. According to a U.S. netizen, the AT&T building in Nashville has a room that is referred to as the 641A. That room is dedicated to intercepting and analyzing communications from Georgia. And we all know that Georgia is one of the key states in the election controversy. Now, is it possible that the explosion was intended to destroy evidence related to the election issues? There are at least two problems here. First, an American netizen claimed that the AT&T building had facilities similar to NSA's 641A room. The room is responsible for Georgia's data. At this point, I haven't found other reports to support this claim. As for intercepting data from Georgia, a big city in the state like Atlanta is more appropriate. Why choose a city in a neighboring state? Second, the NSA's data is now likely to be stored on the cloud. It is a very important piece of information, and it should be stored properly in a very secure location. Destroying a physical building to destroy the data on the web sounds a bit pointless. Aren't there hackers for that? It's not that we completely reject this argument, but it does sound suspicious. However, AT&T does have a close tie with NSA, and that has been confirmed. The NSA is part of the Department of Defense, and its primary function is to collect and analyze foreign and domestic communications data, including internet communications and broadcast surveillance, especially secret communications for the military and diplomatic relations. The US M-18, which successfully deciphered local codes in World War II, can be considered as its predecessor. Due to the large amount of data processing required, NSA employs the most mathematicians and computer experts in the world. It has 18,000 parking spaces outside its headquarters in Maryland and has a massive electricity bill said to be more than $20 million. It is said to have received more funding than the CIA. The National Security Agency has a lot of technical expertise in chips and other hardware and software. It also has very close ties or working contracts with several U.S. private sector organizations. AT&T is one of them. The Intercept, a professional U.S. IT and intelligence information news network, published an article on June 25, 2018, titled "The Wiretap Room, the NSA's Hidden Spy Network in America's Big Cities." It was reported that there is an AT&T building in 8 major cities in the U.S., including Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Washington, D.C., New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. The buildings consist of facilities capable of transmitting and relaying massive amounts of global internet information. These facilities, which are also used by the NSA to conduct intelligence networks, have been in place for a long time. These buildings are generally windowless, tightly sealed, and the structure is made of reinforced concrete. It can withstand earthquakes and even nuclear attacks. Many people walk by these buildings and many don't pay any attention to it because it seems like nothing special. In fact, these buildings are part of the world's largest communications network. In New York City, this AT&T building is located at 811 10th Avenue in Manhattan. In San Francisco, it is located at 611 Folsom Street, along with 6 other related buildings in 6 other cities, all of which are published in this article. For decades, AT&T has been one of the NSA's most trusted partners. AT&T has vast resources at its disposal that are unmatched by any other company. It has a total of 19,500 facilities in 149 countries around the world where a huge amount of internet information converge. The most important of these are the AT&T buildings in the 8 U.S. cities we've mentioned earlier. They form the backbone of AT&T's global infrastructure fortress. There's many emails, online chat messages, social media posts, web browsing records, etc. that all intersect at these locations. At the same time, AT&T is an infrastructure network in the U.S., and many other peers are borrowing AT&T's network facilities, such as Sprint. Some foreign telecom providers also use AT&T's infrastructure. NSA has been working with AT&T because it can offer what other companies can't. Even though the article does not directly address AT&T's role in the Nashville building, there is one image of the AT&T building in Nashville, which appears to be the key node in the nationwide network for AT&T and the NSA. Nevertheless, it is not as important as the other 8 cities. So it seems that the Nashville bombing may have had some impact on the communications in the AT&T building and on the operations of the NSA. Is the perpetrator targeting communications and national security? The police have yet to confirm the motive of the attack, but the impact on AT&T and its customers is significant. As of December 27th, many of the AT&T customers involved still have not had their services fully restored. AT&T acknowledges that one of their major internet hubs have been destroyed. They have a contingency plan to deal with unexpected incidences, so their services will not be completely interrupted. But there are still some areas that are being affected. As of December 27th, many of the AT&T customers involved still have not had their services fully restored. AT&T acknowledges that one of their major internet hubs have been destroyed. They have a contingency plan to deal with unexpected incidents, so their services will not be completely interrupted. But there are still some areas that are being affected. Until the evening on the 27th, besides Nashville, services have not been fully restored in eastern Tennessee, western Kentucky, and parts of 2 other states. The affected areas include 911, hospitals, and private communication facilities. If the perpetrator was not simply acting on personal motives, there could be more malicious motivations behind the attack. Then we cannot rule out that there is a threat posed by some kind of force to the U.S. government. It is this hostile force that is preparing to disrupt the U.S. communications hub. They could even target bigger areas with bombing attempts. On December 27th, the Empire State Building in New York City received news about a bomb threat. For now, it is confirmed to be a false alarm. On the same day, there was a bomb threat in Lebanon City, Tennessee. There are rumors that a box truck was seen on the road playing a similar audio recording as the RV involved in the Nashville bombing. Lebanon is situated in the east of Nashville, a 30-minute drive to the city. It is part of the metropolitan area. The police were panicking. They quickly shut down the highway to locate the truck. A bomb squad was also dispatched to the scene. There is no further information yet. From this incident, regardless if the truck had a bomb or not, people will still relate it to the Nashville Christmas bombing because it played a similar radio recording. The Nashville Christmas bombing does not look like an individual act, but an organized crime. This bombing took place on Christmas and during the sensitive period of the U.S. elections. It seems the bombing is targeted at objects rather than human beings. The bomb was detonated in front of the AT&T building to paralyze a large area of communications. The motive of the bombing is very clear. That is why it attracted a lot of attention. We hope the specific motive of this attack will be revealed to us as soon as possible. After this incident, I wonder, the bombing is a huge issue. If it has involved multiple suspects, why did the U.S. intelligence agency not detect it in advance? If it wasn't intentional negligence, then I guess intelligence officers can also make mistakes. This leads us to our next topic. Recently, Foreign Policy magazine published an investigative report based on interviews with more than 30 current and former U.S. intelligence officials. It revealed a very disturbing situation. In early 2013, when Xi Jinping was about to assume the chairmanship of the Communist Party of China, the West knew little about his background and had no idea what kind of person he was. In January of that year, Nick Kristof, a Chinese correspondent for New York Times, drew on his extensive experience in U.S. dialogue to say that Xi would take the lead in reforming the Chinese economy and loosening political control. But that assumption turned out to be incorrect. Another important reason for the U.S. misjudgment of Xi is that according to his report, during the Obama administration, Chinese hackers hacked into the U.S. Office of Personnel Management and found information about CIA undercover agents in China. Subsequently, the CIA's network of agents in China built up over the years was completely destroyed. This incident greatly affected the quality of Americans' judgment on the CCP's political situation, as they lost too many insider sources. Since then, the looking glass that U.S. officials use to observe the CCP has become less and less transparent. At the time, officials in the Obama White House were divided between those who saw Xi as a reformer and those who saw him as a Mao Zedong 2.0, a dangerous hardliner. With the CIA, it was also difficult for agents to agree on Xi's views. The CIA's confidence was shaken so badly by the recent destruction of their intelligence network that dozens of positions scheduled for missions in China were eliminated, and no more agents were put on the front lines in China to gather the intelligence. They know less about the CCP, but at the same time, they don't know how much the CCP knows about the United States. This lack of knowledge is a serious problem for the intelligence community. At the same time, since Xi took office, Chinese hackers have been hacking with even greater impunity, ransacking the data of Americans and other citizens of the world on an unprecedented scale. Incidents known to us include the 2014 Marriott Hotel security breach, in which the CCP hackers stole information from more than 383 million people. The U.S. Navy's computer system was also compromised, and sensitive data on more than 100,000 Navy personnel were leaked. The recent SolarWinds incident, in which all of the major U.S. military and sensitive government departments were hacked. President Trump pointed this out and said it was probably the work of the Chinese Communist Party, while other officials still say it was Russian hackers. A former U.S. national security official said the CCP had stolen more data than Russia and any other country. However, the Obama administration was soft on CCP hackers, except for the prosecution of only 5 Chinese military hackers for the first time in U.S. history. President Obama still played nice with the CCP. He made a new agreement in 2014 to extend Chinese business and tourist visas from 1 to 10 years, and student visas were extended to 5 years. That shocked the U.S. intelligence community at the time. They predicted that the CCP's intelligence infiltration would be even more extreme, but President Obama and some other government officials confirmed that it was not a big deal. In 2015, Obama symbolically signed a so-called major bilateral agreement with Xi Jinping. It stated that no country could steal commercial secrets, but strikingly enough, there was no penalty at all in this major agreement. Then why would the CCP comply with this agreement? The report noted that by the end of the Obama administration, the CCP had surpassed Russia as the greatest long-term counterintelligence threat to the United States. And the CCP's cyber spies are numerous and the coverage is extensive. The report uses the phrase that the CCP cyber spies are inexhaustible. Before President Trump took office, the relationship between major U.S. technology companies and the Chinese Ministry of State Security was at its peak, according to the report. In the years since President Trump took office, he has faced threats and even political persecution from opposing elements in the intelligence community. The muddy waters in the U.S. intelligence community are also the legacy of the previous administration. They need to be cleaned up, just like the Chinese Communist Party's forces. This brings us back to the topic we have been discussing, the ongoing election controversy. In the U.S., many voters are now actively calling for a group to go to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. They wanted to pressure Congress to correct the election results. As we reported earlier, someone in the U.S. set a goal for at least 1.5 million people to show up. We have seen tour bus pictures on the internet calling for people to join the D.C. gathering. On December 19th, President Trump also tweeted a corresponding call for people to go to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. He urged everyone to go. Giuliani previously said the election evidence was going to blow up after Christmas and become clear all at once. Now, it has passed Christmas. We have to see what's next and what exactly Giuliani is referring to. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Make sure to like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.